runs high in this talk. Give it to me easy and let me try with pleasured hands to take you in
The 60s were a time of change. Man walked on the moon. Barbie was introduced. Important social and political changes in the 1960s caused many Americans to disagree among themselves. Chubby Checker introduced the twist in the 1960s, starting a trend of partners who danced together without ever touching. The Kennedys inspired Americans with their good looks, style, and optimistic political ideas. On August 23, 1963, Americans marched on Washington, D.C. to demonstrate for civil rights. Dr. Martin Luther King gave his famous "I Have a Dream" speech. During the 1960s, Americans fought in the Vietnam War. During the 1960s, the Green Bay Packers dominated professional football under the leadership of Coach Vince Lombardi. In 1967, the first Super Bowl was played in Los Angeles, played between the Green Bay Packers and the Kansas City Chiefs. Arnold Palmer, Jack Nicklaus, and Gary Palmer brought to public attention the game of golf. In 1969, Woodstock music made a legend in rock and roll history. In 1965, President Lyndon Johnson passed the Medicaid Amendment to the Social Security Act. Motown Records was started in 1959 by a young man by the name of Berry Gordy Jr. in Detroit, Michigan. Early in 1964, the Beatles took over America with "I Want to Hold Your Hand." One of the most popular vehicles of all times was the 1964 Mustang. It was introduced at the price tag of $2,500. Over 1 million of these things were sold in the first 2 years. Rowan and Martin, Laugh-In was the primetime TV show on television. And in 1961, President Kennedy said, "Ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country." And he created the Peace Corps so that Americans could help others. The Civil Rights Movement united black and white Americans to help the racial discrimination problem. The 1961 New York Yankees outfielder Roger Maris broke Babe Ruth's home run record of hitting 61 home runs. The first surge in shopping malls began in the 1960s. Then, in a small southern town in Middle Tennessee on the banks of the Elk River, there was a group of young people who were about to make their mark on the world. Little did we know that in the fall of 1960 we were to enter these doors and our lives would be changed forever. Our fears of being a freshman in a new school were only compounded when we were introduced to teachers by the name of Lukey Mansfield, Bear Lindsay, Snuffy Burton, and Colonel Lee. We learned to vote that year. We elected class president Herman Sweeney and secretary Francie Bagley. Our vice president for that year was Mr. Bill Sims. We could also boast about many Southern beauties in our class. Miss Central 1961 was our very own Miss Francie Bagley. Another of our beauties was barn-warming queen Sandra Caudill. And our freshman beauty that year was Rosalind Sowell. We had a lot of talented folks in that group that year. Do you remember this fella? Yep, that's right. It's a talent winner, Bill Myers. We even had poets in our class that year. Can you recognize these people? That's right. It's Kay Broadway, now Miss David Good, Hazel Petty, now Miss Sonny Hyde, and Anita Sarver, now Miss Jerry Johnson. We had farmers like Jimmy Herford with his prize-winning Jersey heifer, Randy Wilson with his Grand Champion hog, and Richard McFerrin with his Champion Camargo corn. See if you can identify these classmates. That's right, Ann Small, Mary Jennings, Francie Bagley, and Carolyn Moorhead. We really never had to fear in those years because we were protected by our fearless safety patrol. Jim Malone, Gary Whitt, Anthony Bradford, Goose Coble, Johnny Tucker, Richard McGee, Cat Morrison, Jerry Spray, and T. Stillman. In 1961, we also had a fearless B-team Tiger football squad. Row 1, Jerry Taylor, Herman Sweeney, Mike Mason, Jerry Darnell, Tommy Anderson, Juppie Craig. Row 2, David Good, Ronnie Beach, Anthony Posey, Gary Heimbo, Randy Wilson, Jim Wakefield, Bobby Alder. Row 3, Billy Gross, Bill Underwood, Richard Buntley, Junior Kennedy, Mike Farrah, and Billy Joe Jean. Cute cheerleaders too that year. Do you think you can still do this, Miss Rosalind? How about you, Becky Lewis? We began our sophomore year by electing Bill Sims as our class president. Jimmy Hereford was our vice president, and Miss Francie Bagley was our secretary for his second term. Our sophomore class favorites were Bill Sims and Nancy Cummings. Our class beauties in 1962 were Dinah Bullington, Mary Jennings, and Kay Barnes. Mr. Nat Walker was nominated the Beast of the sophomore class, so the ladies say. Homecoming attendant for that year was Miss Wanda Mitchell. In the fall of 1962, we were finally juniors at Central High School. Our basketball captains that year were Earl Payne and Judy Gross. Can you identify the other two people? You're right. It was Becky Lewis and Billy Joe Jeans. That same year, 4 of our classmates won the Jesse Award. Jesse was a 2-week period of exploration in the science and engineering areas of learning. The winners were Sloan Becker, Janie McFerrin, Virginia Ann Smith, and Robbie Vance. The barn-warming king and queen for that year was Larry Jennings and Kay Barnes. Our junior beauty winner that year was Miss Rosalind Sowell. Our other beauties were Laura Crawford, Becky Lewis, Miss Beverly Berkland. Do you remember who had the best decorated car for the homecoming parade in 1962? You're right, it was Patsy McAllister with her 1959 Chevy. Our junior homecoming attendant for that year was Miss Wanda Mitchell. The junior talent winner was Miss Ann Small. And for the second year in a row, we proudly elected Bill Sims as our class president. Nat Walker was our vice president, and our class secretary was Wanda Mitchell. Our junior class favorites that year were Jimmy Bills and Nancy Cummings. Can you identify these folks? How about these? How about these two outlaws? This is Richard McGee and Mr. Ralph Hastings. Richard won the state award for corn production that year. Our football heroes in 1962 were Billy Joe Jeans, Jerry Taylor, Don Davidson, David Good, Gary Heimbo, Jim Wakefield, Randy Wilson, Herman Sweeney, and Mike Mason. What about this varsity squad? And we also had a B team. I wonder if these guys can get down in this position nowadays. Our junior class cheerleaders were Carolyn Thompson and Rosalind Sowell. Our majorette for that year was Miss Sandra Caudell and Miss Ruthie Brown. Hooray, we finally made it. We are now seniors. Can you identify the boys and girls state representatives for that year? That's right. Bill Sims, Francie Bagley, Jimmy Bills, Laura Crawford, Diane Finney, Judy Thompson, and Sloan Becker. Our student body president that year was Mr. Jerry Taylor. Miss Central was our very own Miss Candy Richard. Yearbook editors for that year were Bill Sims and Hazel Petty. Football captains were Mike Mason and Jerry Taylor. Basketball captains, Marsha Bills, Carolyn Thompson, Jerry Taylor, and Pixley Barnes. Our cheerleader captains for that year were Rosalind Sowell and Carolyn Thompson. DAR representative was Laura Crawford, and our head majorette was our very own Miss Ruthie Brown. In 1964, the barn warming king again was Larry Jennings, and queen was Miss Judy Hyatt. Talent winner for that year was Miss Francie Bagley. Also that year we had an exchange student. Her name was Mine Gursay. She was from Turkey. The senior beauty winners for that year were Dinah Bullington, Carolyn Thompson, Wanda Mitchell, Miss Betty Harrison, and Miss Judy Nunley. And really, I don't know whether this is correct or not, but they say our best looking fellow was Mr. Ray Steelman. Our senior class officers that year was Jessica Allison, treasurer, Richard McGee, parliamentarian, president Bill Sims for 3 straight years, secretary was Carolyn Thompson, vice president Jimmy Bills, sergeant at arms Kurt Young. Our school superlatives that year were Carolyn Thompson and Jimmy Bills. Laura Crawford and Sloan Becker were our best citizens. The cutest was Ray Stillman and Becky Lewis. Most likely to succeed was Francie Bagley and Jimmy Hereford. The best dressed was Mary Jennings and Nat Walker. The wittiest was Miss Hiller Hobbs and Eddie Sullivan. The best athletes for that year were Jerry Taylor and Patsy McAllister. Friendliest was Candy Richard and Richard McGee. Can you identify these people? That's right, Becky Lewis, Dinah Bullington, and Laura Crawford. And we always knew that our beauties were protected by our famous safety patrol: Eddie Sullivan, Pitts Clayton, Richard McFerrin, and John Rowe Flynn. See if you can identify the back row. That's right, Eddie Hopkins, Dwight Caudle, Richard McFerrin, John Rowe Flynn, and Pitts Clayton. To take a little time to pay a special tribute to a very special person who has been an inspiration to all of us, especially during the past year. She has always played an active part in our class of '64 reunions throughout the years, and she's always been dedicated to working to keep our classmates together. We owe you a very special thanks. Thank you, Becky, and your husband, Jimmy Bills. We will always love you. And now we would like to take a moment to honor the memory of our fallen classmates. Randy Bradford, May 17th, 1962. Linda Tyree, 1963. Sylvia Spurlock, October 16th, 1964. James Locker, December 11th, 1971. Don Patrick, April 9th, 1972. Aline Fry Robinson, June the 22nd, 1982. Don Davidson, February the 12th, 1989. Pam Patterson Beach, March 8th, 1989. Don Jacobs, April 17th, 1990. Tommy Morrison, September 15th, 1991. Herschel Holly, January the 3rd, 1993. Greg Ward, April the 10th, 1993. Jerry Spray, May 11th, 1993. John Knight Williams, December 1999. And in the fall of September of year 2000, we lost another great classmate, Ronnie Meeks. Ronnie will be missed greatly by the class. He was always cheerful and eager to help. He helped get the events together. Everybody will miss you, Ronnie. We'll remember you in your prayers. Reunion. We were just beginning to find our place in life. Most had finished college, some had started their families, some were buying their first home, and some were starting a career. But when we gathered for that reunion, we all wanted to impress each other and were really nervous about being together again. We still had a tendency to hang out in our own little groups. In 1979, at the 15-year reunion, we were a little more confident about what we wanted and where we wanted to go. we still had the feeling that we needed to impress each other. We still had our own little cliques and did not realize that we were forming a bond that would last for a lifetime. In 1984, most were planted pretty firmly and knew what they wanted. Everyone could brag about their children, their jobs, their homes, and how good life had been to them. We just could not believe that it had been 20 years since we'd graduated high school. We didn't want anyone to think we were showing our age, but the years were flying by. In 1989, we were all anxious to get together again and see each other. Most had grown children, a few had grandchildren, some had new mates, some were noticeably absent. The cliques were gone, everyone was beginning to enjoy each other after 25 years. In 1994, we finally realized that we were all equal. Life had put us that way. We all had our problems, health, financial, marriages, even our children. We were all the same now and could relax and enjoy the friendships that were there all along. We could see the age was beginning to show and take its toll, and the gray was beginning to show after 30 years. In 1999, we learned what it was all about loving, giving, sharing, and just being together as friends. It didn't matter what kind of car we came in, how much money we had, or what kind of clothes we wore. We were just thankful to be alive, well, and together once again. The bonds of friendship could now be appreciated. We could look back over the years and forever be thankful for the friends that we have. May those bonds never be broken.
Time of my life, no, I never felt like this before. Yes, I swear it's a truth, and I owe it all to you.
'Cause I had the time of my life, and I owe it all to you.
this time, we would like to thank a very special person for making our Y2K Class of 64 trip possible. Thank you, Philip. Thank you and your wife for making this happen, and we hope we may have many, many more times together like this. To close out, there's one other person we need to thank for the things that have gone on over the years. Her hard work and dedication has kept everyone excited about our class reunions. She's always friendly and giving information to each one of us as what's going on in everybody's lives. Janice, we appreciate what you've done for us, and if it were not for Janice, this presentation would not have been possible. So as we leave here this weekend, let's always remember our Class of 64 Y2K class trip.